Captain Eli Morrow was 53 years old and looked 65. His hair had gone gray early. His face was lined with wrinkles that came from squinting at broken engines in bad light. His hands were rough and scarred from years of working with machines that did not want to be fixed. He was not a handsome man. He was not a rich man. He was not a man that anyone would notice in a crowd. He was, however, a stubborn man. And stubbornness, he had learned, was worth more than beauty or wealth in the dark corners of the galaxy. His ship, the Perseverance, matched its captain perfectly. It was old and ugly and held together by determination. The hull was covered with patches where repairs had been made. The engines made sounds that worried every mechanic who heard them. The navigation computer crashed at least once a week, but the ship flew. Against all logic, against all expectations, the ship flew. Morrow had been a salvager for 20 years. He traveled to places like Junkyard Station 7, picked through the wreckage of dead ships, and sold whatever he found. It was not glamorous work. It was not profitable work. But it was honest, and it kept him moving, and moving was all he wanted to do. He did not like to stay in one place too long. Staying meant thinking. Thinking meant remembering. And Morrow had memories he was trying to outrun. His wife, Elena, had been dead for 6 years. Pirates had attacked their ship while Morrow was away on a salvage run. Elena had been alone with their daughter, Maria. She had fought back. She had killed 3 of the attackers before they overwhelmed her. Maria had been 4 years old. Morrow had found the ship drifting 2 days later. He had buried his wife and daughter on a quiet moon with no name. He had not spoken about them since. He arrived at Junkyard Station 7, expecting nothing special. Another stop, another search through garbage, another few credits to keep the Perseverance flying. He docked his ship, paid the small fee, and began exploring the station. On his 3rd day, he found her. She was hiding behind a waste processing unit, pressed into a corner so small that he almost missed her. Her silver skin was filthy. Her white gown was torn and stained. Her eyes, when they found his, were wild with fear. She hissed at him like an animal. Morrow stopped immediately. He recognized what he was looking at. A child. A Valkyrie child, abandoned and starving and terrified. His first thought was that she was not his problem. His second thought was of Maria. He sat down on the floor, 3 meters away from the child, and pulled a ration bar from his pocket. He did not speak. He did not move toward her. He simply sat there and ate his food slowly, as if he had all the time in the universe. The child watched him with suspicious eyes. Morrow finished his ration bar, stood up, and walked away. The next day, he came back. Same place, same time. He sat down with another ration bar and ate in silence. The child was still there, still watching, still afraid. He came back the day after that. And the day after that, on the 5th day, when he sat down and began to eat, the child moved. Slowly, carefully, like a wounded animal approaching a trap. She crept toward him inch by inch, her eyes never leaving his face. When she was close enough, she reached out and snatched the ration bar from his hand. Then she ran back to her corner and ate it so fast she nearly choked. Morrow smiled for the first time in months. By the end of the week, she was sitting next to him while they ate. By the end of the month, she was sleeping in the cargo hold of the Perseverance. Teaching her to speak was slow work. The Valkyrie language was different from Galactic Common, and she had been so young when she was abandoned that she had never properly learned either one. Morrow was patient. He pointed at objects and said their names. He repeated himself 100 times until she understood. Her first word in Galactic Common was an accident. Morrow had been showing her how to operate the food dispenser when she looked up at him and said, "Dad?" She meant to say something else. She was trying to say that or what or some other simple word she had learned. But her mouth made the wrong sound, and the word came out, and Morrow felt his heart stop beating for a moment. He did not correct her. The years passed. The child grew. Morrow stopped thinking of her as the child and started thinking of her as his daughter. He named her Nothing. Among humans, he explained, children sometimes chose their own names when they were old enough. She could be called whatever she wanted to be called. When she was 7, she chose the name Kira. She did not know why she liked it. She did not know it was a fragment of the name she had been born with, the name that had been erased from imperial records. She simply felt it was right. Morrow taught her everything he knew. He taught her to read star charts and navigate through asteroid fields. He taught her to repair engines and patch hull breaches. He taught her to bargain with merchants and avoid trouble with authorities. He also taught her things that were harder to explain. He taught her that her worth was not measured by the brightness of her markings. He taught her that kindness was more valuable than power. He taught her that family was not about blood, but about choice. When she asked about her markings, why they were so dim, why other Valkyrie looked at her with disgust, Morrow shrugged. Humans can't see that stuff the way you do, he said. To me, you glow just fine. She was 8 when she first called him Dad on purpose. She was 12 when she saved his life during a hull breach, pulling him to safety with strength she did not know she had. She was 15 when she beat a Grothian twice her size in a fight, because he had insulted Morrow. She was 18 when the Valkyrie warship appeared in orbit around Jungyard Station 7 and everything changed. Morrow saw the ship on his scanner and felt ice form in his stomach. He recognized the design. He knew what it meant. The Empire had come for his daughter, and Eli Morrow, who had lost one family and sworn never to love anything again, realized he would burn the galaxy to ashes before he let them take her. The Valkyrie were beautiful. Everyone in the galaxy agreed on this. They stood tall, almost 2 meters high, with silver skin that caught light like polished metal. But their true beauty came from their markings. Lines of soft light ran across their bodies, glowing blue and white and sometimes gold. These markings told everyone who they were. Bright markings meant strong blood. Bright markings meant power. Bright markings meant worth. The Emperor of the Valkyrie Imperium had the brightest markings anyone had ever seen. His light filled rooms. His glow made others look dim. He ruled 300 worlds, and billions of his people bowed when his image appeared on their screens. He had conquered enemies, crushed rebellions, and built an empire that stretched across the stars. He had also just become a father. The birth should have been a celebration. The Empress had carried the child for 11 months, and the priests had performed the sacred rituals. They had read the signs in the stars. They had promised a healthy heir, a child whose light would surpass even the Emperor himself. They were wrong. When the baby girl opened her eyes for the first time, the room went silent. The doctors stepped back. The Empress made a sound like something breaking inside her chest. The Emperor stared at his daughter and felt his heart turn to ice. The child's markings were dim. So dim they could barely be seen. They flickered weakly, like a dying flame, like a star about to go dark forever. The priests rushed forward to examine her. They ran their sacred instruments over her tiny body. They whispered to each other in worried voices. Finally, the head priest approached the Emperor and bowed low. "Forgive me, Divine One," the priest said. "The child is contaminated. Her blood carries an ancient curse. Her light will never brighten. She is." He could not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Among the Valkyrie, dim markings meant weak blood. Dim markings meant shame. Dim markings meant the family line had been polluted somewhere in the past. A dim child born to common people was tragedy enough. A dim child born to the Emperor was catastrophe. The royal court demanded answers. How could this happen? Who was responsible? Some whispered that the empress had been unfaithful. Others said the emperor's own bloodline was not as pure as he claimed. The accusations flew like knives, cutting everyone they touched. The emperor made his decision 3 days after the birth. The child would not be killed. That was forbidden by ancient law. But she could be removed. She could be erased. She could be made to never exist. They called the ritual the severance. The priest performed it in a dark room, far from the palace, with no witnesses except those who would never speak of it. They burned the child's name from the royal records. They erased her genetic signature from the imperial database. They removed every trace of her existence from every system in the empire. The empress begged to keep her daughter. She fell to her knees before the emperor and wept. She promised to hide the child, to raise her in secret, to never let anyone see her dim markings. The emperor looked at his wife with cold eyes. "She is not our daughter," he said. "She never was. Speak of her again, and you will join her." The empress never spoke of her again. They put the child on an unmarked transport ship. No name was given to the crew. No explanation was offered. The ship's captain received coordinates to a place at the edge of known space, a place where the Empire sent things it wanted to forget. Junkyard Station 7. The station floated in the darkness, between stars, far from any trade routes, far from any civilization. It had been built 200 years ago as a military outpost, then abandoned when the war ended. Now it served as a dumping ground. Broken ships were left there to rot. Unwanted cargo was dropped there to be forgotten. And people, sometimes, were sent there to disappear. The population of Junkyard Station 7 changed constantly. Refugees arrived from distant wars. Criminals hid from authorities who would never bother to look for them here. The sick came to die in peace. The desperate came hoping to find something worth salvaging. No one came to help. No one came to govern. No one came at all, except to leave things behind. The transport ship arrived at the station without warning. It docked for exactly 4 minutes. The crew opened the cargo doors, placed a small figure on the deck, and left immediately. They did not speak to anyone. They did not file any reports. Within an hour, the ship had jumped to hyperspace and vanished forever. The people on the station gathered around the docking bay and stared at what had been left behind. It was a child. A Valkyrie child, obviously, with silver skin and the faint traces of markings that barely glowed. She wore a simple white gown with no identification. She carried nothing. She said nothing. She was 3 years old. The station's inhabitants looked at each other. They knew what a Valkyrie child on Junkyard Station 7 meant. They knew no one would come looking for her. They knew she was not their responsibility. Most of them walked away. The child stood alone in the docking bay for hours. She did not cry. She did not call for help. She simply stood there, her dim markings flickering, her dark eyes watching the strangers who passed by without stopping. When the lights in the station dimmed for the night cycle, she finally moved. She walked slowly, on unsteady legs, until she found a dark corner behind a waste processing unit. The machinery was warm. The space was small enough to hide in. She curled up on the cold metal floor and closed her eyes. In the distance, she could hear the sounds of the station. People arguing, machines grinding, ships coming and going. Life continuing as it always did, for everyone except her. She was alone. She was forgotten. She was nothing, but somewhere in the docking bay, a new ship was arriving. An old ship, held together by patches and stubbornness. A human ship with a human captain, who had lost everything once and had nothing left to lose. The ship was called the Perseverance, and its captain was about to find something in the garbage. That would change everything. The child did not know this yet. She knew only the cold, the dark, and the terrible silence of being unwanted. She knew only that the people who should have loved her had thrown her away, like broken machinery. She did not know that humans were different. She did not know that humans collected broken things. She would learn. The Volcari Imperium was dying. For 300 years, the Empire had ruled its corner of the galaxy with absolute power. Its fleets had crushed all opposition. Its armies had conquered every world they touched. Its people had believed they were chosen by the gods to rule forever. They were wrong. The Emperor had been assassinated 2 years ago. His own council had turned against him, poisoning his food during a celebration feast. They had expected to take power for themselves, to divide the empire among the strongest families. Instead, they had started a war. 3 factions now fought for control. The Loyalists wanted to restore the old ways and find a proper heir to the throne. The Reformers wanted to create a new government without an emperor. The Purists wanted to purge the empire of all contaminated bloodlines and start fresh with only the brightest, purest Valkyrie remaining. The war had killed billions. Entire planets had been burned. The great fleets had turned on each other, and the beautiful ships that once protected the empire now destroyed it piece by piece. In the chaos, someone had found the old records. A clerk in the Imperial Archive, searching for something else entirely, had discovered a file that should not have existed. A file about a child born to the Emperor 18 years ago. A child who had been severed, erased, thrown away. A child who, according to the ancient laws, was the only legitimate heir to the throne. Commander Thyrosol received this information with great interest. Thyrosol was the leader of the Loyalist faction. She was a true believer in the Empire, a woman who had served the throne her entire life. Her markings blazed with noble light. Her family had been loyal to the imperial bloodline for 20 generations. She believed, with absolute certainty, that finding the lost princess would end the war. A legitimate heir would unite the factions. A true empress would restore order. The empire would be saved. She had spent 2 years searching. Her agents had followed the trail from the imperial palace to an unmarked transport ship to a forgotten corner of space. They had found records that should have been destroyed. They had bribed officials and threatened witnesses and killed anyone who stood in their way. Finally, they had found Junkyard Station 7. The warship Radiant Throne was the pride of the Loyalist fleet. It was half a kilometer long, bristling with weapons, carrying 1,000 of the best soldiers in the Empire. It had won 17 battles in the Civil War. It had never been defeated. Thyrosol stood on the bridge of her magnificent ship and looked at the pathetic station floating in space before her. Junkyard Station 7 was ugly. It was small. It was populated by refugees and criminals and the forgotten waste of 100 worlds, and somewhere inside it was the key to saving everything she loved. Her soldiers deployed in perfect formation. They marched through the station's corridors, pushing aside anyone who stood in their way. They followed the tracking signal from the princess's genetic signature until they reached a docking bay where an old, ugly human ship sat waiting. The ship was called Perseverance. Thyrosol had never seen anything so pathetic. Standing in front of the ship were 2 figures. One was an old human male, gray-haired and worn, with scarred hands and tired eyes. The other was a young Valkyrie female, tall and lean, wearing human clothing, her silver skin clean but her markings painfully dim. The lost princess. Found at last, Thyrosol stepped forward, her soldiers forming ranks behind her. Her markings blazed with authority. Her voice rang through the docking bay like a bell. "Princess Kiravel," she announced. "I am Commander Thyrosol of the Loyalist fleet. I have come to bring you home." The young Valkyrie woman stared at her without expression. "I don't know that name," she said. Her accent was wrong. She spoke like a human, not like proper Valkyrie. My name is Kira Morrow. Tyrosol smiled with patience she did not feel. Your true name was taken from you, she explained. You were stolen from the Imperial Palace when you were a child. You are the daughter of Emperor Calver, the last legitimate heir to the throne. The Empire needs you. She expected tears. She expected gratitude. She expected the lost princess to fall to her knees and thank her rescuers. Instead, the girl laughed. It was not a happy laugh. It was cold and sharp and contained 15 years of pain. Stolen? Kira said. Is that what you're calling it? Stolen? Tyrosol's smile flickered. The records show. I know what happened, Kira interrupted. I didn't remember it for years, but I've had time to research. My father, the Emperor, ordered me thrown away because my markings were dim. My mother, the Empress, let it happen. Your precious empire left a 3-year-old child in a junkyard to starve. The docking bay went silent. That was the old regime, Tyrosol said carefully. Those responsible have been punished. The empire has changed. We need you now. You need me, Kira repeated. 15 years of nothing, and now you need me. She looked at the soldiers, at the weapons, at the warship visible through the station's windows. What if I say no? Tyrosol's expression hardened. The Empire's survival is not optional. You have a duty to your people. You will come with us, Princess. One way or another. The old human stepped forward then. He moved slowly, calmly, putting himself between Tyrosol and Kira. His hand rested on a tool at his belt. His eyes were steady. She's not going anywhere, he said. 1,000 Velkari soldiers stared at him. One human, old, unarmed, standing against the might of an Imperial warship. Tyrosol laughed. And who are you to stop us? The human smiled. It was not a friendly smile. I'm her father, Eli Morrow said. And you have no idea what that means. Commander Tyrosol looked at the old human standing before her and felt something she had not felt in years. Confusion. She had studied humans, of course. Every military commander in the galaxy studied humans. They were everywhere, spreading through space like weeds, taking jobs no one else wanted, living in places no one else would tolerate. They had no psychic powers. They had no natural weapons. They had no great empire of their own. They were, by every measure that mattered, unremarkable. And yet, there were stories. Whispered tales that Velkari officers shared late at night when they thought no one important was listening. Stories about humans who would not surrender. Humans who would not break. Humans who would fight to the death for reasons that made no logical sense. Tyrosol had always dismissed these stories as exaggeration. Looking into Eli Morrow's eyes, she was no longer certain. Stand aside, human, she commanded. This does not concern you. Everything about my daughter concerns me, Morrow replied. He had not moved. His hand still rested on the plasma cutter at his belt. She said no. That means no. She is not your daughter. She is the heir to the Velkari throne. Blood doesn't make family. I've raised her for 15 years. I taught her to walk. I taught her to read. I held her when she had nightmares. Mara's voice was calm, almost gentle. What did your empire do for her? Tyrosol felt her markings flicker with anger. You will not speak to me this way. I have 1,000 soldiers. You have nothing. Morrow's smile grew wider. Do I? He raised his hand and pressed a button on his communicator. A simple movement. A simple sound. Then he spoke 5 words that changed everything. They're trying to take my daughter. For a moment, nothing happened. The docking bay remained silent. Tyrosol's soldiers stood at attention, their weapons ready. Then the station came alive. It started with the docking clamps. Heavy metal arms, designed to hold ships in place during maintenance, suddenly locked onto the radiant throne. The warship's hull groaned as the clamps tightened with force that should have been impossible for such old equipment. The Arisol's communication officer spoke urgently in her ear. "Commander, our engines are being jammed. We cannot break free." Before she could respond, the lights in the docking bay flickered. Then the station's defense grid activated. No one had known the defense grid still worked. Junkyard Station 7 had been abandoned for decades. The weapons system should have been dead, rusted, useless. Instead, targeting lasers painted the hull of the Radiant Throne. Ancient missile tubes opened. Energy cannons that had not fired in 100 years hummed with power. "Commander," her officer said, his voice now trembling, "we are detecting weapons locks from 17 different positions. If they fire, I can see that," Tyrosol snapped. She turned to look at the human, who stood exactly where he had been standing, still smiling that infuriating smile. "What is this?" she demanded. "This is Junkyard Station 7, Morrow said. "Home of the forgotten, the abandoned, the thrown away. Just like Kira." He gestured at the station around them. "Refugees from a dozen species live here. Criminals who had nowhere else to go. People your empire discarded, Commander. People nobody cared about. And they answer to you? I've lived here for 15 years. Fixed ships for people who couldn't pay. Shared food during shortages. Buried the dead when plagues came through." Morrow shrugged. "I didn't ask for anything in return. That's not why you help people. But humans remember kindness. And apparently, so does everyone else." Figures were emerging from the corridors around the docking bay. Grothians, massive and strong, carrying welding torches that could cut through armor. Telluri, small and quick, holding devices that flickered with electronic interference. A dozen other species, armed with whatever they could find, all of them moving to surround the Velkari soldiers. Thyrosol recognized some of them from intelligence reports. The Grothian mechanic was a wanted criminal. The Telluri information broker had a price on his head. These were not warriors. These were not soldiers, but there were hundreds of them. And they were all looking at the old human like he was their commanding officer. "You helped them," Tyrosol said slowly. "So now they fight for you." "They fight for Kira," Morrow corrected. "She grew up here too. Fixed their ships alongside me. Played with their children. Learned their languages." He looked at his daughter with pride. "She's not just my family. She's theirs." One of the Grothians stepped forward. He was enormous, covered in scars, missing one eye. His voice rumbled like thunder. "The human saved my life when my reactor breached," he said. "Would have died without him. Would have doubted him. Nobody else would have helped a Grothian criminal." He looked at Thyrisol with his remaining eye. "His daughter, his problem. That means her problem, our problem. Understand?" Around the docking bay, others were nodding. Species that had fought wars against each other for centuries were standing together, united by nothing more than the memory of an old human who had been kind to them. Thyrisol felt something she had never felt before in her military career. She felt outmaneuvered. Morrow stepped closer to her. He was old and tired and unarmed, and he walked toward her like she was not a threat at all. "I'm going to explain something to you," he said quietly, "because I don't think your people understand humans. You measure worth by how bright someone glows. You threw away a child because her light was dim. You've spent 15 years killing each other over bloodlines and purity." He gestured at the station around him, at the refugees and criminals who had become an army. "These people? They're the ones you threw away. Just like Kira. Just like me, in a way. The galaxy is full of broken pieces that the great empires don't want." His voice hardened. "But here's what humans figured out a long time ago. The broken pieces still fit together. They still work. And they remember who helped them when they had nothing." He stopped an arm's length from Thyrisol. Her guards raised their weapons, but she waved them back. "You can probably still kill me," Morrow said softly. "Maybe you can fight your way out. But you'll lose soldiers. You'll lose time. Your ship might not survive. And when you get back to your war, you'll do it without your princess. Because she is my daughter, not your symbol, not your key to power, mine." His eyes met hers, and Thyrosol saw something there that made her step back without meaning to. "And I will burn everything I have built," Morrow finished, "to keep her safe." Commander Thyrosol stood in the docking bay of Junger Station 7 and made the hardest decision of her life. She could fight. Her soldiers were trained, disciplined, armed with the best weapons the Empire could provide. They would win eventually. The refugees and criminals surrounding them were not real warriors, but winning would cost. Her, ships, soldiers, time, the Loyalist faction, could not afford to lose any of these things. And there was something else. Something in the old human's eyes that told her he was not bluffing. He would die before he let them take his daughter, and his death would turn this station into a slaughterhouse. Thyrosol had not become a commander by fighting battles she could not win cleanly. "Stand down," she ordered her soldiers. The words tasted bitter in her mouth. Her officers stared at her in shock. "Commander, I said stand down." She looked at Morrow with cold respect. "You have won this day, human. But the Empire will not forget. The princess belongs to her people." "Kira belongs to herself," Morrow replied. "Always has." Thyrosol turned to Kira, who had watched the entire confrontation without speaking. The girl's markings still flickered dimly on her silver skin. She still wore human clothing. She still stood beside the old salvager, like he was the most important person in the universe. "Princess," Thyrosol said formally, "the throne awaits you. The war could end tomorrow if you took your rightful place. Billions of lives could be saved. Your people need you." Kira was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was steady. "My people threw me away when I was 3 years old," she said. "This man found me starving behind a waste processor. He came back every day until I trusted him. He never asked for anything. He never wanted anything. He just stayed." She looked at Morrow, and something soft crossed her face. "You want me to leave him for a throne?" Kira shook her head. "There is no crown in the galaxy worth more than what he gave me." Thyrosol closed her eyes. She had failed. The last hope of the Loyalist faction was refusing to come home. "Then the Empire will fall," she said quietly. "And you will have let it happen." "The Empire fell when it threw away a child for being different," Kira replied. "I'm just not interested in putting it back together." The Valkyrie soldiers withdrew. The warship Radiant Throne released from the docking clamps and pulled away from the station. Within an hour, it had jumped to hyperspace and vanished. The station erupted in celebration. Grothians and Telluri, and a dozen other species cheered and embraced each other. Someone found alcohol that had been hidden away for special occasions. Music began playing from speakers that had been silent for years. Morrow stood apart from the celebration, watching his daughter accept the gratitude of people she had grown up with. He felt tired, old. The confrontation had taken more out of him than he wanted to admit. Kira found him later, sitting alone in the cargo hold of the Perseverance. She sat down beside him without speaking. For a long time, they simply existed together in comfortable silence. "Why?" Kira finally asked. "You could have let them take me. You would have been safe. The station would have been safe." Morrow did not answer immediately. He stared at his scarred hands, at the years written in his wrinkles and gray hair. "I had a daughter once," he said quietly. "Before you. Her name was Maria. She was 4 years old." Kira went very still. "Pirates attacked our ship while I was away on a salvage run," Morrow continued. My wife, Elena, tried to protect her. She fought them, killed 3 of them. But there were too many. His voice cracked slightly. I found the ship 2 days later. I buried them both on a moon with no name. Tears were forming in Kira's eyes. When I found you behind that waste processor, Morrow said, I saw her. Not the same face, not the same species, but the same fear, the same need, the same look in your eyes that said nobody was coming to help. He turned to look at her directly. I failed her, he said. I wasn't there when she needed me. I've carried that guilt for almost 20 years. He reached out and took Kira's hand in his. I decided that this time I wouldn't fail. Whatever it cost, whatever it took, this time I would protect my daughter. Kira did not speak. She simply leaned against him and let the tears fall. In the weeks that followed, word of what had happened spread through the galaxy. The story grew and changed as stories do, becoming larger and stranger with each telling. A human salvager who had stood against an imperial warship. A junkyard that had risen against an empire. A princess who had chosen a father over a throne. Other humans heard the tale and nodded. Of course he did. What else would a father do? Other species heard it and felt something they could not name. Unease, perhaps. Or wonder. Or something like hope. 3 months later, a delegation arrived at Junkyard Station 7. They were not Valkyrie. They represented a council of forgotten worlds, abandoned stations, discarded peoples. They had heard about what happened. They wanted to build something new. They asked Morrow to lead them. He refused. He was a salvager, he said. He fixed broken things. That was all. They asked Kira instead. She looked at Morrow. He shrugged. Your choice, kid. Always has been. Kira Morrow accepted. Not to rule, she explained. Not to command. Just to speak for the people the galaxy had thrown away. Just to make sure no one was forgotten again. The Perseverance remained docked at Junkyard Station 7, even as the station transformed around it. New ships arrived daily. New people came seeking a place to belong. What had been a graveyard became a home. One evening, Kira found Morrow in the engine room, covered in grease, fighting with a converter that had been obsolete for 30 years. We can afford new parts now, she said. This one still works, he replied. Just needs someone to believe in it. She sat down beside him, took a wrench from his toolbox, and helped him fix what was broken. In the void beyond the station, the Volcari Civil War raged on. Empires rose and fell across the galaxy. Species conquered and were conquered. The powerful fought for power, and the weak suffered as they always had. But in a junkyard at the edge of known space, a human and his daughter worked side by side. They built something new from the pieces others had thrown away. They proved that worth was not measured by brightness or blood or birth. They proved that love was stronger than empires. And Kira's markings, when she smiled at her father, seemed to glow just a little, brighter than before. Not because anything had changed in her blood, but because she had finally found where she belonged.